Rachel Carrington stood at the altar of St. Paul's Church in Charleston, South Carolina, her heart pounding beneath the layers of white lace and satin. At 28, she had imagined this day 100 times, the soft glow of sunlight filtering through stained glass windows, the murmur of over 100 guests, the scent of fresh lilies filling the air. Her veil trailed behind her like a whisper of promise, and the bouquet in her hands trembled slightly with anticipation. Brady would be there, smiling, that easy grin of his, ready to start their life together. They had planned everything: the intimate reception at the old plantation house, the honeymoon in the Caribbean. It was supposed to be perfect. The organ music swelled, signaling the start of the ceremony. Rachel glanced toward the doors at the back of the nave, expecting them to burst open with Brady's arrival. But minutes ticked by, and the doors remained shut. Whispers rippled through the pews like a gathering storm. Her mother, seated in the front row, fidgeted with her handkerchief, her face paling. Rachel's best friend, Emily, shot her a worried look from the bridesmaid's side. Even the minister shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his collar. Then the best man, Tom, Brady's childhood friend, approached the altar, his face ashen. He leaned in close to Rachel, his voice barely above a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a blade. "Brady's not coming. I'm sorry, Rachel." The words hung in the air, unreal at first. Rachel blinked, her mind struggling to process them. Not coming? Brady, the man who had proposed to her under the stars last summer, who had whispered promises of forever just last night. The church seemed to tilt, the ornate ceiling pressing down on her. Gasps echoed from the guests. Family, friends from New York, colleagues from her publishing house, distant relatives who had flown in for the occasion. Her grandmother clutched her chest, and her father stood abruptly, his face reddening with confusion and anger. Tom continued, his eyes avoiding hers. He changed his mind, said he couldn't go through with it. "It's not your fault, Rach. He just panicked." Not her fault. The phrase echoed hollowly in her ears, offering no comfort. Rachel felt a strange numbness spread through her body, as if she were watching this happen to someone else. The veil suddenly felt heavy, the dress constricting. She could sense every eye on her, the pitying stares, the awkward shifts in seats. Whispers grew louder. "What happened? Oh, poor girl." Did she see this coming? She didn't scream or collapse. Instead, a bitter laugh escaped her lips, short, sharp, and utterly devoid of humor. It startled even her. Heads turned, and the minister cleared his throat awkwardly. Rachel straightened her spine, clutching the bouquet so tightly that the stems bit into her palms. Without a word, she turned and walked down the aisle, the same path she had imagined taking, with Brady's arm linked in hers. Now it was a solitary march, her heels clicking against the stone floor like accusations. The doors swung open, and she stepped into the blinding spring sunlight. The world outside was cruelly beautiful: birds chirping, flowers blooming in the church garden, the faint hum of traffic from the nearby street. Rachel made it to the stone steps before her legs gave way. She sank down, the gown pooling around her like a defeated cloud. Tears welled up, but she blinked them back fiercely. Not here. Not yet. From the side of the church lawn, a man watched her. Ethan Maddox, 34, a renowned cardiologist from New York, had come as a courtesy to his sister's friend, the bride. He didn't know Rachel personally, only that she was a book editor with a reputation for kindness and sharp wit. But seeing her now emerging from the church alone, her posture rigid with unspoken pain, stirred something in him. He had been lingering outside, avoiding the crowded nave when the chaos unfolded. Now he crossed the grass toward her, his polished shoes silent on the dew-kissed ground. Rachel didn't notice him at first. She stared at the horizon, whispering to herself, "He didn't come. He really didn't come. Ethan hesitated a moment, then sat beside her on the steps, keeping a respectful distance. He didn't offer platitudes or empty sympathies. Instead, after a long pause, he said softly, "If you want to go back in there, not as the one left behind, then I could pretend to be the one who stayed." She turned to him, her eyes red-rimmed and wide with shock. "Why would you do that?" Ethan met her gaze steadily, his voice low and honest. "Because I've been left too, and I know what it's like when no one chooses to stay." The hours following the church debacle blurred into a whirlwind of confusion and reluctant decisions. Rachel barely remembered agreeing to Ethan's impulsive offer. One moment she was sitting on the stone steps, the weight of her wedding gown anchoring her to the ground. The next, she was back inside the nave, Ethan's hand steady on her arm, as he announced to the stunned crowd that they had been secretly involved for months. "We've kept it private," he said smoothly, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding operating rooms. "But today we're making it official." The guests murmured in shock, but no one questioned it, not with Ethan's confident demeanor and Rachel's numb nod. The minister, flustered but relieved, proceeded with a hasty ceremony. Vows were exchanged in whispers, rings borrowed from family members slipped onto fingers. It was over in minutes, a farce sealed with a chaste kiss that felt more like a handshake. By evening, the story had exploded across local news outlets and social media. Millionaire doctor's surprise wedding, a twist of fate at abandoned ceremony. The headlines screamed. Paparazzi snapshots captured Rachel in her gown, Ethan's arm around her waist as they left the church. Speculation ran wild, a secret affair, a dramatic rescue, a modern fairy tale. Rachel's phone buzzed incessantly, with messages from friends and family. Congratulations mixed with bewilderment. She silenced it, retreating to a hotel room Ethan had booked to avoid the chaos at her planned reception venue. The next morning, over coffee in the hotel lobby, they formalized the arrangement. Ethan pulled out a notepad from his briefcase, his surgeon's hands steady as he sketched out terms. 3 months, he proposed. We live together to sell the story. Public appearances as needed. No interference in personal lives. After that, a quiet annulment or divorce, whichever is cleaner. Rachel stared at the paper, her mind still reeling from Brady's betrayal. "Why 3 months?" she asked. Ethan shrugged. "Long enough to let the gossip die down, short enough to minimize complications, and it gives you time to regroup without the world watching you fall apart." She signed with a shaky hand, the ink blurring slightly from a stray tear. It wasn't love. It was survival. They relocated to Ethan's penthouse in Manhattan that afternoon. The space was a stark contrast to Rachel's cozy Brooklyn apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, minimalist furniture, in shades of gray and white, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a showroom. "Your room?" Ethan said, gesturing to a guest suite with its own bathroom and a view of the skyline. "I'll be in the master. Make yourself at home." He disappeared into his study, leaving her alone with unpacked boxes of her belongings, hastily gathered by Emily. Rachel spent the first week in a fog. She rewrote her resume, applied to publishing jobs, and avoided calls from her worried mother. To distract herself, she cleaned scrubbing counters that were already spotless, organizing shelves in the living room. It was therapeutic, a way to impose order on her shattered life. Ethan was rarely home. His shifts at the hospital stretched into the night. When he returned, often after midnight, he'd knock softly on her door. "You okay today?" he'd ask through the wood. At first, her responses were curt nods or mumbled, "Fine." But as days passed, she found herself opening the door a crack, offering a weary, "better than yesterday." Their interactions were polite, almost clinical. Breakfasts were shared in silence over coffee and toast, with Ethan scanning medical journals on his tablet while Rachel scrolled job listings. He left notes, simple things like groceries in the fridge or dry cleaning picked up. In return, she cooked occasional dinners, leaving plates covered in the warmer. It wasn't intimacy, it was coexistence. But in the quiet evenings, Rachel began to notice details about him: the faint scar on his jaw from a childhood accident, the way he rubbed his temples after long surgeries, the stack of unread novels on his nightstand, suggesting a man who once had time for more than work. One afternoon, while dusting the built-in bookshelves in his study, a room filled with medical texts and a few framed diplomas, Rachel's hand brushed against a loose panel. Curious, she pried it open slightly, revealing a small wooden box tucked away. Inside was a single letter, folded neatly, the envelope addressed in elegant script to Lena. The paper was worn at the edges as if handled many times, but never sent. "I forgive you," it read in Ethan's precise handwriting. "I hope you find what you're looking for." Rachel's breath caught. She snapped the box shut, sliding it back into place, her heart racing. Who was Lena? And why had Ethan hidden this away? She didn't mention it, but the discovery lingered, a quiet seed of curiosity. For the first time, she wondered if the man who had married her, out of pity, carried his own unspoken wounds. The penthouse felt a little less empty that night, the silence between them charged with unspoken questions. 3 weeks into their makeshift marriage, Rachel began to settle into a rhythm that felt almost normal, if normal meant living in a luxurious cage of pretense. The penthouse, with its expansive views and echoing silence, no longer intimidated her as much. She had landed a freelance editing gig with a small indie publisher, poring over manuscripts in the sunlit nook of her room during the day. It wasn't her dream job, but it kept her mind occupied, away from the what-ifs that plagued her nights. Ethan remained a constant yet distant presence, gone before dawn for rounds at the hospital, returning late with the faint scent of antiseptic clinging to him. Their conversations had evolved from polite exchanges to something warmer, like shared observations about the city's endless hustle or recommendations for books she'd enjoy. But cracks in her facade appeared during a particularly grueling interview for a full-time position at a midtown publishing house. The hiring manager, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, skimmed Rachel's resume with a frown. "Your experience is solid, but there's this gap almost a month now. Care to explain?" Rachel hesitated. The words, "I was left at the altar," lodged in her throat like a stone. She mumbled something about personal leave, but the interview ended abruptly, the door closing on her hopes with a polite, "We'll be in touch." Rain poured down as she left the building, drenching her blazer and flattening her carefully styled hair. By the time she reached the penthouse, she was soaked through her spirits, as sodden as her clothes. Ethan was home earlier than usual, shedding his coat in the foyer when she stumbled in. He took one look at her, shivering eyes downcast, and wordlessly guided her to the kitchen island. Without asking questions, he draped a towel over her shoulders and busied himself at the stove, heating up leftover chicken soup from the weekend. The aroma filled the space, a comforting counterpoint to the storm raging outside. "Eat," he said, simply sliding a bowl in front of her. Rachel stared at it, the steam rising like unspoken confessions. Tears came unbidden, silent at first, then spilling over as she clutched the spoon. "Why are you so kind to me?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "This is all fake. You don't have to do this." Ethan sat across from her, his expression unreadable at first. Then something shifted, a softening around his eyes, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "I never saw you as fake, Rachel." He paused, glancing at the rain-streaked windows. "From the moment I sat on those steps with you, it felt Real. At least the pain did. She looked up, wiping her cheeks. What do you mean? He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. For the first time, he opened up about Lena. She had been his fiancée 5 years ago, a fellow doctor with ambitions that outgrew their life together. We were weeks away from the wedding. He said, his voice steady but laced with old hurt. Invitations sent, venue booked. Then she got an offer for a prestigious fellowship in London. She said she couldn't pass it up, that our life would hold her back. I found out later she'd been doubting us for months. He stared into his own untouched bowl. She left a note. Just like that. I stood in our empty apartment, feeling like the world had pulled the rug out from under me. I stopped trusting after that, stopped believing anyone would stay. Rachel's heart ached with recognition. That's why you offered to marry me, because you know what it's like. He nodded. Partly, but also because I saw strength in you that day. You didn't break. You walked out with your head high. Emboldened, Rachel shared her own story, the slow unraveling with Brady, the signs she had ignored, his growing distance, the late nights at work that smelled like excuses. I thought I wasn't enough, she admitted. Smart enough, exciting enough. He said it wasn't me, but how could it not be? They talked late into the night, the rain a steady backdrop to their confessions. For the first time, the penthouse felt less like a stage and more like a sanctuary. Over the following days, their barriers eroded further. Evenings on the balcony became routine. Ethan with a glass of wine, Rachel wrapped in a blanket, sharing fragments of their pasts. He spoke of his demanding career, the lives saved and lost in the OR. She described the joy of shaping stories, the rejection letters that mirrored her personal failures. Yet they held back from anything physical, the agreement a silent wall between them. Rachel began to dread the end of their 3 months, fearing the emptiness that would follow. Unbeknownst to her, Ethan harbored the same quiet terror that she might be the one to walk away. The fake marriage had unwittingly exposed their real wounds, drawing them closer, even as it threatened to pull them apart. Rachel's unease festered like an untreated wound as the weeks blurred together. The freelance work provided a distraction, but the looming end of their 3-month agreement gnawed at her. She caught herself watching Ethan more closely, the way he loosened his tie. After a grueling shift, the quiet intensity in his eyes when he reviewed patient files. Their late-night talks had become a lifeline. Yet she held back, terrified that crossing into something real would shatter the fragile peace they'd built. The breaking point came on a crisp autumn afternoon. Rachel was leaving a coffee shop near her publisher's office, manuscript pages tucked under her arm, when she spotted Brady leaning against a lamppost. He looked disheveled, his once confident posture slumped, dark circles under his eyes. "Rachel," he said, stepping forward with a desperation she hadn't seen before. "I need to talk to you." She froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. "What are you doing here?" He ran a hand through his hair, his voice cracking. "I messed up, big time. I panicked about the future, about us. But I haven't stopped thinking about you. Please give me another chance." The words hit her like a gust of wind, stirring up old pain. Memories flashed, their shared apartment, lazy Sundays, the proposal that had felt like a dream. But overlaying it all was the image of the empty altar, the pitying stares. "No," she said firmly, her voice steadier than she felt. "You left me there, Brady, in front of everyone. Love doesn't run away like that." He reached for her arm, but she stepped back. "I'm married now. It's over." She turned and walked away, her steps quickening until she was out of sight. Her hands shook the entire subway ride home, a mix of anger and relief churning inside her. That evening, Ethan arrived earlier than usual, carrying takeout from her favorite Thai place. But his usual calm was fractured. His jaw was tight, his movements clipped. As they sat at the dining table, he finally spoke. I saw Brady today, outside your office. Rachel's fork paused midair. You were there. I had a meeting nearby. Walked by on my way back. His eyes searched hers. Do you still have feelings for him? The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken fears. Rachel set down her fork, her appetite gone. No, I told him it's over, but seeing him, it stirred up everything. Ethan pushed his plate away, standing to pace the room. Then why didn't you tell me, are you regretting this, us? The accusation stung. This, you mean our fake marriage? She rose too, her voice rising. How can I regret something that's ending in a few weeks anyway? That's what terrifies me, Ethan. When the clock runs out, you'll walk away just like he did. He stopped, turning to face her, his expression raw. You think I'd leave Rachel? I've been terrified too. Afraid that once this is over, you'll realize you deserve better than a workaholic who's forgotten how to let someone in. She stepped closer, tears blurring her vision. Then why did you start this? Pity. At first, yes, empathy for what you'd been through. But now? He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away a tear. Now I don't want it to end. I love you, Rachel. Not the story we told the world, but you, the woman who rebuilds herself every day. The confession broke the dam. Rachel pulled him into a kiss, fierce and unreserved. That night they crossed the line they'd danced around for so long, their touches tender and honest as surrender to the truth they'd both been hiding. In the quiet aftermath, wrapped in each other's arms, Rachel felt the first true spark of healing. This wasn't pretend anymore. It was a choice to stay. As the 3-month mark approached, the penthouse air felt charged with unspoken finality. Rachel woke early one crisp autumn morning, the agreement papers clutched in her hand like a relic from another life. She placed them on the kitchen island, the ink faded from repeated readings. Ethan entered, still in his scrubs from an overnight shift, his eyes weary but alert. He paused, staring at the documents, the silence stretching between them like a taut wire. We don't need this anymore, he said finally, his voice low and resolute. Rachel's heart skipped. Why not? She asked, her breath catching. Ethan reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a simple platinum band engraved inside, with 2 words, I stayed. Kneeling before her, he took her hand. Rachel, I didn't propose that day out of pity. I did it because I saw in you the strength I lacked. You've taught me that love isn't about running from fear, it's about choosing to stay, even when it's hard. Will you marry me for real this time? Tears streamed down her face, but they were born of joy, not pain. Yes, she whispered, pulling him up into an embrace. 1,000 times yes. The kiss that followed was deep and affirming, sealing a promise forged in shared scars. They planned the real wedding with deliberate simplicity, a stark contrast to the spectacle of her first. It took place on a warm summer evening atop the hospital rooftop, where Ethan spent his days saving lives. No paparazzi, no lavish decorations, just close family and a handful of friends under a canopy of string lights, the city skyline twinkling below like scattered stars. Rachel's mother beamed from the front row, her father beside her, while Ethan's sister, now reconciled with the family's past dramas, stood as a witness. The minister, a colleague of Ethan's, kept the ceremony intimate. Rachel walked down the makeshift aisle alone, her gown a flowing ivory silk that caught the breeze. No veil this time, just her hair loose and free, a symbol of the walls she'd dismantled. Ethan's face lit up as she approached, his usual composure cracking into a genuine boyish smile. They exchanged vows. They'd written themselves promises not of perfection, but of perseverance. I vow to stay, Ethan said, his voice steady, slipping the ring onto her finger. Through the long nights and the uncertainties, because you've shown me that love is worth the risk. You've healed parts of me I thought were broken forever. Rachel's turn came, her words soft but unwavering. I vow to choose you every day, Ethan. You didn't just rescue me that day. You reminded me I'm worthy of being chosen. Together, we're not just surviving, we're building something unbreakable. The guests applauded as they kissed the sunset, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. Laughter filled the air during the small reception, toasts from friends, a simple cake shared under the stars. For the first time, Rachel felt truly seen, not as the abandoned bride, but as a woman reclaimed. In the months that followed, their life unfolded with quiet grace. Rachel returned to publishing full-time, channeling her experiences into a memoir about resilience and second chances. It became a modest bestseller, her words touching others who'd known abandonment. Ethan adjusted his schedule, prioritizing weekends off to explore the city with her museum visits, park walks, lazy brunches that stretched into afternoons. They traveled to a weekend in the Hamptons, a trip to Paris where they wandered hand in hand along the Seine, rebuilding trust in the world together. One evening, as autumn leaves swirled outside their windows, they sat on the balcony, wrapped in a shared blanket. The city lights sprawled below, a testament to lives intersecting in unexpected ways. Do you ever think about that day at the church? Rachel asked, her head on his shoulder. Ethan pulled her closer. Only to be grateful. It led me to you, the woman who taught me to stay. She smiled, tracing the engraving on her ring. They weren't the broken people from before. They were whole, having chosen each other amid the ruins. In that choice lay there forever a life not defined by abandonment, but by the quiet power of remaining.